Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for deciding to spend your time with us. Welcome. Today, we have a very interesting session for you. The topic for today is especially pertinent. During this session, we'll zoom in to review some of the challenges and opportunities that exist when it comes to processing and sharing diagnostic test information and other information, of course, across multiple entities. These could be health clinics, labs, state and local agencies such as the CDC, insurance firms, and of course, consumers such as ourselves who need access, timely and relevant, access to the information that different institutions have on record about us. So we'll present during the session today a view of what emerging technologies such as smart contracts and verifiable credentials promise as a solution. We are also very excited to show during this session a live demo of an end-to-end COVID-19 testing and vaccination process using Daml smart contracts and verifiable credentials using Trinsic. We'll also bring out why this is not just another healthcare on blockchain kind of a session, by bringing out some of the unique advantages and innovative ways you could deploy such a solution, for yourselves. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into making such a solution real, but I'm sure you'll immediately see the benefits that the technology and such a solution presents, especially from an operational efficiency and customer experience perspective. I'm recording the webinar, so I'll share the recording with you after the session. And now let me welcome our speakers. First off, Bart Kant, CEO of RT Ledgers, who created the wonderful demo and solution that we are going to see today. Bart, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Manish. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So my name is Bart Kant. I'm the founder of Rethink Ledgers, which is an independent consulting firm in the blockchain, DLT, and centralized ledger space. So my background goes already back a number of years. In 2014, I was really focused from the very beginning on blockchain solutions while I was a consultant with Capgemini, doing digital transformation, mostly in the financial services sector. And that evolved greatly when I joined IBM and became a co-lead of the IBM Blockchain Services Organization. So I have a lot of experience working on implementing blockchain-related solutions, mostly in the financial services sector, but also in the healthcare sector. And as an independent consultant, really was intrigued by what was happening to us, all of us during COVID. And that's triggered me to build a little prototype incorporating some of the newer technologies like Daml, like the solution from Trinsic around verifiable credentials, and hope to share that with you here on this webinar.
Perfect. Thanks, Bart. And now I'd like to welcome Riley Hughes, CEO of Trinsic. Trinsic's Verifiable Credentials app has been used in the solution that we're going to see shortly. Riley, would you like to say something?
Yeah, sure. So hi, everybody. I'm Riley Hughes. Happy to be talking about verifiable credentials and how they can be used and integrated with other blockchain solutions today. My background is I got kind of a start in verifiable credentials and self-sovereign identity after I was working at an impact investing firm and was trying to assess impact on the investments we were making. But it was really hard because we want to assess impact in terms of people, and that requires identity. And in the parts of the world that we were deploying these investments, it was difficult to measure accurately the investments impact that we were making because of the identity problem. So it led me to talk with somebody named Phil Windley, who was the chair of a nonprofit called the Sovereign Foundation, and I ended up being the first employee hired there, aside from, of course, the original founders of that project. And so I was at the Sovereign Foundation for a couple of years until I started Trinsic with two other co-founders to try to make it easy to integrate self-sovereign identity and verifiable credentials into any application. And that's what we're seeing here. So happy to be here to talk about it.
Perfect. Thank you, Riley. And now I'd like to welcome Corey Todaro, my colleague from Digital Asset. He's a healthcare expert as well, and he's going to be sharing his insights on some of the challenges and opportunities he sees in the healthcare space. Corey, would you like to say hello?
Great, thanks Manish. Hello everyone. I'm Corey Tadaro. I'm Senior Product Manager for Healthcare here at Digital Asset, where I eat, drink, and sleep Daml for healthcare, working on specific industry tooling, working with clients and healthcare enterprises on using Daml to solve acute business problems, and working in a variety of areas. Past 6 months, of course, a lot of attention has been drawn to COVID. Really excited to be looking at the demo today, to be able to share the demo with you that Bart and Riley have worked on, and to talk about some of the broader issues around healthcare challenges and regulation and Daml tooling.
Perfect. Thank you, Corey. So of course, we'll be keeping the session very interactive. So feel free to send in your questions via the Q&A panel or even the chat, and we'll address them during the session. So with that, Corey, let's start with you about some of the challenges that exist in the healthcare technology space today.
This is the part where I usually start to wax about all the woes within the healthcare industry. Being a veteran of healthcare operations myself, having spent over a decade in hospital operations, IT and strategy in the provider sector, there's no shortage of war stories around some of the what I'll call wonky workflows in healthcare. And what we mean by wonky workflows are cumbersome business processes that require hands-off of information, timely information and response with a range of counterparties, be that insurance companies, claims clearinghouses, patients, fellow providers and practitioners, whether that be affiliated or simply adjacent within a market. The process, the delivery, the processing, the payment of healthcare is very cumbersome with lots of handoffs, lots of fundamental data interoperability issues. And this has only been exacerbated in the last decade by the drive for, ironically, digital transformation within healthcare. The proliferation of digital tools does not guarantee smooth workflows. And so we see now that business processes are often additionally complicated by uninteroperable data systems, data formats, messaging specifications, and or tooling. So the presence of a digital tool within a healthcare ecosystem does not necessarily guarantee or even lend itself to smooth workflows, to improved efficiency. Often we find we have to adapt manual workflows to accommodate new technology. And so the fundamental problem is that workflows are not shared. At best, we have automated workflows within our boundaries of an enterprise or our domain, and we essentially pass messaging traffic over the transom or under the door, slipping envelopes under the door to each other to pass information and waiting for them to come back. And the ultimate price that we pay for this level of dysfunction in smoothly operating and automated workflows in healthcare is for the operators themselves costly manual work. The fax machine and the pager still reign supreme in many healthcare settings in the U.S. And elsewhere. But I think the most important cost that we see in healthcare from this kind of workflow is the friction that the patient experiences in delivery of healthcare, being able to follow getting courses of care, being able to understand their financial obligations towards their care, being able to make smart decisions about their own health and their receipt of healthcare is often blocked by this. And so we see that critical processes ending up broken, and we radically increase the risk of things going wrong, of lost revenue, of poor patient experience, all of which contribute to our overall sense of what's wrong with healthcare today. Yeah. And so, go ahead, Manish.
I wanted to mention risk of privacy and other regulatory compliance issues as well.
Absolutely. Of course, I mean, one of the reasons why it's so cumbersome is that healthcare data is so highly regulated, as it should be, because it speaks to very intimate and personal aspects of our lives and our families' lives. And so any provider, any entity who handles such sensitive personal health information, of course, is required to meet a range of regulatory requirements around the movement of that data, the security of that data, encryption, etc. And so one of the reasons I'm so passionate about Daml is that it is essential tooling for bridging islands within and between enterprises. Specifically in healthcare, we can leverage what we call smart contracts or Daml multi-party workflows written in Daml to create a shared workflow so that my systems are interoperable with their systems within a very well-defined and regulated workflow. And what that means is, from a Daml perspective, in terms of Daml language, is parties can agree to a workflow where parties' rights and obligations are precisely defined. The ability to view data, the ability to change data, the ability to advance a workflow is all defined on a party-by-party basis. And so we can strictly regulate not only the privacy of the data, while also automating the workflow around the handling of that information. And so we can create transparent real-time views around a workflow so that we're not waiting on the envelope to slip under the door to know what the next step in the process is. We can more seamlessly communicate and bring value to patients, providers, and payers in fundamentally new business practices. And so we can reduce the risk of exposure of sensitive health information. We can increase the data transparency within those precisely defined contexts that the Daml language enforces, and ultimately to build a real-time information flow between within large complex healthcare enterprises, and of course between healthcare enterprises where it's essential. Healthcare is never delivered by a single entity. It often involves a multiplicity of parties, and Daml is the ideal tool for that. What I'm excited about today is looking at how those inherent characteristics and the inherent advantages of Daml can be applied specifically to the COVID space and combined with technical innovation like verifiable credentials. And so when I think about Daml-driven healthcare, of which today's topic and demo will be a great example, we want to break down data silos and drive fundamental workflow and data interoperability. There's a lot of messaging formats in healthcare. If it's financially related, that's usually an X12 EDI message. If it's clinical data repository, we're talking about FHIR, HL7. We have code sets for everything in healthcare, from diagnoses codes to pharma codes to condition codes. We have messaging specifications for continuity of care. Daml can sit at the heart of a lot of these messaging formats, translate messages from one specific messaging format into a workflow and generate a new message in a different format on the other side. And so Daml can become a indisposable tool for bridging the chasm between existing technology stacks and messaging formats within healthcare, so that we can engineer more responsive systems for the benefit of the patient ultimately, and for the operators who have to handle and deliver healthcare on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and just a quick comment on the point of data silos or data islands between different entities, or even within an enterprise when there are multiple applications that share data with each other. Today, I think the story of software has always been about abstracting and making it easy and going to the next level of software that makes a lot of things that we do today kind of redundant. Somebody still does it, but it's relegated to somebody else, you know. Similarly, I think when we are used to taking multiple data sets, consolidating them, staging them, cleaning them, all of that stuff, kind of Daml sort of makes that, abstracts over on top of that complexity, I think. So that's one way to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it raises the issue of interoperability to the level of workflow, where I want to know, who am I interacting with? What do I need to do? What do they need to do? That's what Daml code actually looks like when we write smart contracts in Daml. And so we can abstract away the lower level systems which produce a report or to reach a certain calculation around the value or the cost of a given episode of care, and bring that seamlessly into an automated workflow without having to re-engineer the entire system. And so the ability for Daml to incorporate through API and through messaging specifications is really, I think, the secret sauce for a lot of healthcare applications. And I'm excited to explore that more today.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah. So with that, I think let's quickly touch upon what Daml is, because that's going to be covered in the demo today. And then Bart, feel free to jump in as well. But Corey, do you want to do the intro quickly?
Sure. Well, Daml, of course, is a language. It's a language for writing multi-party workflows in a secure and reliable way, deterministic way. But it's also a runtime for processing these kinds of smart contracts for these workflows. And so Daml is, when we write Daml, we end up with a Daml application, which runs on the open source Daml runtime and can communicate with systems, with UIs, front ends, etc., through something called the Daml Ledger API and JSON API. We can also integrate Daml into a variety of what we call persistence layers. That can be, of course, so the topic of the day is around blockchain and distributed ledger, a wide range of blockchains and distributed ledgers, VMware, Hyperledger Fabric, Sawtooth, Bezu, but also importantly, databases, whether that's Postgres, Amazon Aurora, Amazon QLDB, which are fundamentally centralized databases. And what makes Daml unique is that we separate the writing of your application from the choice of underlying persistence layer. And one of the most important reasons for that, of course, is regulation and privacy. Making sure that medical data meets the regulatory, or your application, which utilizes medical data or accesses sensitive PHI, can meet the regulatory requirements for whatever location you might happen to be in. It's important that the solution designer have the choice of persistence layer to meet those kinds of functional and non-functional requirements that either the customer demands and or regulatory bodies demand. And so that choice of underlying persistence layer is a crucial aspect of Daml. But these are all of the rather components that make up what we call a Daml-driven solution.
Yeah.
And if I can maybe jump in, right? So I became aware of Daml about a year ago and really started to spend a little bit of investigation and learning around the tool set. And, it was very clear from the very beginning that this was, because it's a business-driven modeling language, it could be one applied to a number of different use cases. But then secondly, it also helped me to, make an important decision, push an important decision down the road, right? What is going to be my data store of this application? Is it going to go the blockchain way, or is it going to go the decentralized ledger way, or is it going to be deployed on a simple database? And kind of not having to make that choice and building a solution, was really valuable to me when I picked Daml to build this prototype solution that we'll demonstrate here shortly.
Yeah, and the beginning of the session, I said, that this is not just another healthcare on blockchain kind of a session. So that's one of the things is, if you see here, the interoperability of Daml, one Daml instance with another Daml network, for example, this is what brings out a very key difference. So for example, you need not rely on a blockchain or a use case that allows you to interact with other external entities in order to develop such an application. Because of the benefits that Corey mentioned, synchronize your workflows, have multiple applications within a company access a common single source of data without having to constantly reconcile it. All of those, the workflow inside an enterprise can be developed using Daml and deployed on a database, for example, because within an enterprise, you may not want to deploy a blockchain. But at the same time, that same workflow can be extended. So then it works on a workflow across two different entities. For example, Bart's workflow that we'll show today. If that is on a blockchain, then your workflow within the enterprise can easily interoperate with it. So that's, I think that's one of the big benefits with separating the smart contract layer from the blockchain layer. Okay, so with that, last week, Bart published a very nice blog on Daml.com. So around this topic, and this diagram is actually taken from there. So it shows the current landscape and the data islands. and the challenge that Bart set out to solve, with his demo. So Bart, do you want to describe this a little bit, and then we
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of what I'm trying to do here in the next few minutes is kind of apply all of the challenges that Corey talked about to the opportunities that particularly exist in the COVID-19 situation. So COVID-19 happened to all of us, and it was actually by being part of the COVID Credentials Initiative, so CCI, which is a work group, basically a global community of more than 300 individuals, over 100 companies that all came together and looked at what technology can we use to basically enhance privacy in this difficult situation of getting some of the credentials out there. It could be testing, could be in the future vaccines. We all kind of had a lot of discussions around immunity proofs, and being part of that initiative kind of drove me to build a solution based on Daml, based on verifiable credentials, and trying to address some of these challenges here, right? So in the US, we have over several thousands of health clinics. There's a lot of software providers. We all know the pain about dealing not only with the health system, but then also the insurance side of things. And then we all look at the news and look at the reports of what is the situation. And many issues have appeared over the last couple of months. Think about Florida, where there was a dispute about the data just recently about incorrect or delayed data that was coming through. And so trying to come up with a prototype solution, this is something that obviously need to be further evolved and takes a lot of the context of the legal aspects that needs to be aware. But trying to get real-time information between all of these different data islands into a single solution is what drove me to build this prototype. And from that perspective, the second big challenge, and I started explaining that a little bit more, is right around what is the data store for a solution like this, right? When we're talking about privacy and authentication, we need to store somewhere the data, and being able to defer that decision around should I use a blockchain, should I use Hyperledger Fabric, Corda, Bezo, or go the more centralized way. In this particular situation, I've made the decision because my use case was driven by getting the right data to the state agencies on doing it a much more centralized way. And centralized could be a simple database. It could be a centralized ledger like AWS QLDB, or it could be Project Daml, which is a centralized ledger-based infrastructure that was provided by the team from Digital Assets and allowed me to quickly deploy my Daml code together with the UI and making the solution a quick deployment. So that's kind of where I was able to leverage a lot of the kind of capabilities that were available around Daml, and then kind of took it upon myself to integrate it with kind of the next technology component is verifiable credentials, which Riley can talk a little bit more about and what Trinsic offers.
Yeah, so we'll look at the workflow of how it was used. But Riley, do you want to quickly outline essentially what are verifiable credentials first for people who are new to the concept, and then maybe a little bit about how Trinsic does it?
Yeah, absolutely. So verifiable credentials are a W3C standard for issuing and verifying essentially digital certificates, right? So think about the things that you put in your wallet. And how easy it is to use them to prove things about yourself in the real world. I can take out my driver's license and prove that my name is Riley, and that I am of a certain age, and and all of those things, and people can trust that with a high degree of trust. But there's no way to do that online, and verifiable credentials solve that problem by really mirroring the way it's done in the real world. So if you see the diagram on the slide in front of you, you'll see that there is an issuer. And they issue a credential to a person, and then the person, when they need to use the credential, can share a verification with what we call a verifier. And as long as the verifier trusts the person that issued it, then this system works really well. And they can, and that's the case because these credentials are tamper evident. The word tamper proof is on there for simplicity's sake, but really they're tamper evident, so the verifier can tell if they've been tampered with. They can instantly verify it, and uniquely, the credential is held solely with the person or the subject of the credential. So verifiable credentials work really, really nicely when you don't necessarily want to store all of the data on a blockchain, right? If we're talking about personal health information, for example, you know, it's probably not something that you want to just, you know, basically encrypt and put on a public blockchain like Ethereum that's you know, tamper proof and that sort of thing, right? Because the implications of that data being compromised are really severe. And so verifiable credentials provide a way to keep everything off ledger. There's only essentially keys that are put on the public ledger for encryption's sake, and public keys for the issuer and that type of thing. But there's not even a reference or a hash of the credentials on the ledger. It's completely off ledger solution, so that you can do these verifications instantaneously. And it also works really nicely for putting the person as the point of integration between multiple kind of services, right? And then because they're a W3C standard, they are standardized and interoperable between different implementations. So I don't know, Bart, do you have anything to add to that? Anything that I missed specifically about, you know, when you were looking into verifiable credentials that
yeah, I thought it was a great, and again, new technology, right? So we're early adopters here of, you know, making this use case applicable, and I really looked at this as a solution for solving the digital experience in the case of COVID-19 testing, right? So if you look at what is currently happening, if you go do a test, you know, a lot of paperwork that needs to be filled in. And then in the best case scenario, you get maybe a letter in the mail, in most cases only a phone call. And so, you know, looking at, you know, what is the minimal expected digital experience that everybody's looking for, you know, verifiable credentials solve that problem, and could be applied here to kind of, you know, test results, and that could be applied in lots of different use cases of where that could be valuable. But it could be further enhanced in the future around vaccine records, medical records, and so on. And so the concept of verifiable credentials in the healthcare space seems very, very promising, not without its challenges around the regulatory aspect. So, but, you know, we see a lot of progress in that aspect as well, with some recent changes into, you know, for instance, the California law around allowing verifiable credentials for medical records, and setting up, you know, a work group to further study what that could mean to further digitize health records in the future.
Yeah. So Manish, if you don't mind going to the next slide, I think.
Yeah, just 1 second. I know a few questions have come up, and unfortunately I can't access the Q&A panel while we are in full screen mode. So I'm going to go off full screen for a second and see the questions that came up. Just give me 1 second. Okay. Is it okay if you can you see the screen still, Riley?
Yes.
Okay. So let me access the Q&A if you want to proceed, and then I'll go back to full screen soon.
Yeah, I can see the questions. I think the comment that I'll make here is that I think Trinsic and digital asset are really aligned well, and are comparable in that Trinsic is a full stack self-sovereign identity platform, right? So we offer a full stack solution for issuing and verifying verifiable credentials, as well as digital wallet solutions and a suite of APIs and SDKs for developers. But the beautiful thing is that verifiable credentials are just this data standard. They don't necessarily need to leverage blockchain, although we have chosen to leverage blockchain because of its various benefits. But just like Daml abstracts away the decision of blockchain versus database, etc., Trinsic likewise is sort of a layer above that. And so on that previous slide with the issuer and the verifier and the person, you can sort of imagine below that, there's a layer below that that could be viewed as sort of either a blockchain or a centralized database or digital wallets or whatever the solution may be. But it's flexible enough that it can support all of those different use cases. And so I guess, Manish, would you like me to answer these questions that were asked, or should we wait till the end?
Yeah, I think one of the questions that came up would be worth addressing now. Question was from Indra about images. So what do you do about images and other such information that comes that needs to be stored? Where do you do with those? Yeah.
That's a great question. So there are several kind of approaches. There's various approaches because, like Bart said, the technology is new, and many of the approaches are for sort of sunny day scenarios, right? So maybe it doesn't cover all of the edge cases, but it solves the problem immediately. So with regard to medical images, I would say that verifiable credentials may not support all of the important edge cases that are required for medical images, for example. And that's okay. But for now, images and credentials are typically done using an attachment to the credential that's also stored on the mobile device of the individual with the credential, or hosted in something like IPFS with a hash included in the credential, which is resolvable for the verifier. So there's several ways that people do it. I've actually haven't seen anybody using verifiable credentials specifically for medical images, just because there's probably a bit more work to do there to cover all of the important cases required for something like medical images.
And another question that Bart, you or Corey might want to address, this question, and let me go back off full screen. I'm sorry for this. Is a question from Charles. He says that, how are you handling multi-party consensus and all of those things? And are you truly leveraging the innate benefits of DLT tech with such a solution? Do you want to comment quickly on that aspect?
Yeah, no, maybe I give it a shot here. So, the question around using DLT is kind of optional here, right? And in the case of the prototype that you will see shortly, kind of the decision was to make it much more centralized than decentralized. And that was based on the fact that we're looking at this from a state agency perspective. They need to get kind of all the correct data for all of these test results that are happening, and using kind of some of the early stages of decentralized tech to accomplish this, right? And when I say early stages of decentralized tech, is that you can use digital identifiers, DIDs. It does not necessarily need to include your social security number, but could kind of identify you in a more pseudonymous way. The Daml language and all the smart contracts are driven by who are the signatories and the observers of that contract, and who really can get access of the data versus everybody else, and making it widely available through kind of a more public type blockchain. So there's components of DLT, distributed technology being leveraged, but also kind of looks at the practicality. And in many cases, and coming from the blockchain world and having lived, a lot of attempts to decentralize a lot of workflows across lots of business users, there's sometimes not necessarily a need to make everything decentralized and operate it in a more or less centralized way, and solving the solution like that for the specific use case.
Yeah,
I can offer a little bit more as well. The output of the Daml runtime is deterministic, and where that runtime is located is optional. It can be run by a single party on behalf of a lot of users, in which case it is a centralized solution. The output of the Daml runtime can also be written to a distributed ledger, in which case we have multi-party consensus over the lineage, the audit trail of all transactions that have taken place and have been outputted from the Daml runtime. And so you'll see that, for example, in our Fabric integration or in any of our distributed ledger applications where there is a governing consensus mechanism. The runtime outputs from one party or from multiple parties can be written to that ledger where consensus is achieved. And so Daml can work in a range of what we call trust environments, depending upon the appetites of the client, of the participants who are utilizing the solution, and of course the regulatory structures as well that have an influence on that.
Exactly. And, just a quick thing on this, the benefits of Daml, obviously, if you see here, bridging data silos, that's one business benefit that we're delivering. And, like Corey mentioned, there's a range, right? So within an enterprise, you could deploy your smart contracts on a database per se, and the solution that has a low, high trust requirement or a low trust, condition between the two different entities can be deployed on the blockchain. And the key is that both of those networks interoperate with each other. In this case, we obviously chose to, Bart chose this method, but a combination of this option 1 and option 2 is obviously possible.
And the important thing is that your Daml application written once will work on any of these underlying persistence layers.
Yeah.
So the way you write your Daml applications and your Daml contracts does not have to take into account the way that the underlying persistence layer is structured and/or operates.
Yeah. Okay, so since I cannot see the Q&A, I'm just going to go off full screen one more time. Okay, and I think we can address a couple of other questions maybe down the line because they might be addressed already. Okay, so this question I think from Rohit, from a centralized app configuration, and this question is for Bart actually. What is how would you, if you want to migrate to a DLT, if need be in the future, is it possible? Or maybe that question is for us actually, Corey.
Sure.
So,
Yes, you can. The application will work if you deploy it to a DLT. Now, if you want to move the historical record of all transactions that have taken place, that is a more complex operation. It's doable, but it's complicated. And so we have application portability out of the box. That's very simple. You don't have to adapt your application to move it from a centralized structure to a DLT structure. And in fact, a lot of our clients will start off with an MVP that runs on a stack that their ID departments know how to do DevOps for. So that might be something like a Postgres database before they move to a newer infrastructure like a DLT. Moving historical data is not an automatic operation. And so it does require some lift there to take past records and port them over to a new database structure, distributed or otherwise.
Yeah. And obviously, I think I see a couple more questions from Indira. Those are a little bit more complex. Indira, we'll probably follow up with you offline via email and we can address those. There's just one more question around, does Daml connect, the interoperability layer? Does that work between different DLTs, between CODA and Besu? And the answer is, yes, it does. So if you've got a Daml application running on a CODA network and a Daml application running on a Fabric network, you could absolutely atomically transact across the two networks. Mm-hmm. So let me go back to full screen. And now let's get into the high-level architecture of the solution. Bart, do you want to outline that?
Yeah, so created this kind of one slide covering all of the major components of the prototype, right? So participants you will see in the solution are citizens, people like you and me that want to have a test done or getting vaccine. Obviously the healthcare providers, labs are very important in providing the test and the solutions. And then getting all that information over to a state agency. If you look at it from a state agency, they already have all of our records. Anyway, they know who are the citizens of their states, and they most likely will work with some kind of technical operator. So you will see kind of in the solution, kind of the operator helping do the administrative part. And then, of course, it can be all linked directly to insurance companies. From a business logic, everything that you will see in the solution is been coded in smart contracts using Daml. And, again, was a decision to get kind of the benefits of, what we all know from a blockchain perspective, or kind of the key advantages, but also gave me a very rapid implementation tool using some of the APIs that are available, some of the, and hiding a lot of the complexity, right? So if you want to build a solution, you want to focus on the business language and not necessarily about kind of all the cryptographically security aspects. And then included kind of the second set of technology from Trinsic, mobile app that I will showcase here, and the underlying technology stack that is supported by Trinsic. So based on Hyperledger Aries from a communication perspective, and then anchoring some of the information into the sovereign network. Again, none of this information that I will show from a business perspective end up in a sovereign network. It's only the schema, it's some of the digital identifiers of the major participants in the network, but no transactional data goes into the sovereign network. And then from an infrastructure perspective, it's deployed on Project Daml, which allows for quick deployment and experimentation provided by the team from Digital Asset. But if you want to port this to Amazon Quantum Ledger database, a centralized ledger, or any of the other platforms, there's quick tools, there's open source components or solutions like the team from Blockchain Ledger with their Sextant platform. And so a lot of options are available there. So maybe going to the next slide.
Yeah, but I think we're running out of time also, so
yeah.
I want to get into the demo.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly introduce. So a network operator will onboard citizens, health clinics, and state agencies. Once that citizens is on board and accepted, they will create a request to the health clinic to get an appointment. Test will be done, and you will see the interaction between the citizen and the health clinic, and using then that mobile experience and the verifiable credentials going back and forth. So that's kind of the core of the prototype here. So if you allow me to share my screen.
Yes, I'm stopping.
So then we will kind of take a quick look at screen one. All right. And hide this. So going into Project Daml, I'm going to log in as the operator. And I have deployed one single contract at the initial stage. So here see the smart contract reference number, the ledger party operator, and allows me, the operator, to set up the party. So I'm going to set up Alice as a citizen, and that's now stored into the ledger. I'm going to set up a healthcare provider. Navant is my healthcare provider here in North Carolina. So setting up that party. And so now these are parties on the block, on kind of the ledger for using Daml. So you can also put state agency already deployed to the North Carolina State Agency. So I'm not going to duplicate that. And so I'm going to log off and log in with Alice. In the interest of time, I've disabled secure authentication, but this can be accomplished by using JWT tokens. And so now we see that that contract, that invite from the operator, has been assigned to Alice. She's going to accept the invitation. We're going to do a quick registration here. It could be very traditional, but I decided to implement DIDs as well, and just going to put some dummy information here in the interest of time, and get the registration done. Also giving the options, right? What is your preferred communication protocol? You know, do you still want to get your information over email or a phone call? But I'm selecting verifiable credentials and then linking that to the insurance. So at this point in time, the limited information is identified, and what I'm going to do now is create a connection and ask for a created connection for the verifiable credentials. And I'm going to switch over my screen to my iPhone before I click the button here. So let me share, new share, and I'm going to go to my iPhone and getting quickly onto the network here, screen mirroring. And so now you see here my cell phone, and I'm gonna just open up the Trinsic app. So a mobile app on the iPhone, could be Android, and you probably cannot see, but I'm gonna create a connection, and that's gonna create a scan code. So if I now share my screen, and it already captured it, and basically kind of makes the invitation to connect from the app to my mobile phone, and I'm going to accept it, and a connection has been created. So let's go back to the workflow here, and I'm going to go back to my screen, and I'm going to do a test request. Since I've asked for connection for doing a test, I now select my provider, my healthcare provider, and I'm Alice. I'm doing a request. That now creates a new smart contracts in Daml, and allows me to now log in as a healthcare provider. So healthcare provider, login page, and now we see Alice has requested an connection to their healthcare provider, and they're basically are going to, healthcare provider is going to set up that test appointment. So we're going to do it for today, which is the 2nd. I'm going to create a test appointment date. We also can do vaccine appointment dates, but let's just stick to COVID testing here. New contract, smart contract was created between Alice and Novant with the appointment date, and now the healthcare provider can do the test. So let's do the test information here and put in some basic information. The test type was a COVID test. The test number, it was negative, and we're doing this for the state of North Carolina. And before I click test, I'm going to now switch back to my iPhone and share the experience for what's happening on my wallet. And let's see if I still need to, I have to connect again. Here on screen mirroring. No, do it again. Okay, and so I'm back into the Trinsic app, and going to kind of click the button now for conducting the test, and that should trigger here now my first verifiable credential. Right, so you received a credential offer from Rethink Ledgers, and if we look at the information, then you see it coming from Novant for Alice with the state of North Carolina, test number, test results, and so on. And so here now I can click accept, and my verifiable credential is submitted to my mobile phone as a digital experience of what my test results are. So we can do the same thing kind of for about vaccines. I'll skip this workflow, but I'll show you one more kind of view on this, and that is on the state side. So if I log in now as NC Health, the State Department for North Carolina, NC Health. And then we can see that the health agency.
We can't see your screen, Bart.
Okay, all right, share my screen again. That's going back and forth indeed. So I logged in as NC Health, and now we see that contract between Alice and Novant was created with the test results of negative. I did one more test earlier this morning, so they can basically see around all of their citizens and all of their health clinics on what is going on with the testing. And from here, they can supply their own verifiable credentials, so they can provide in the future, if there's a concept like immunity proof, they could provide as a state agency a solution on their own and saying, now as the state of North Carolina, I'll provide you with an immunity proof that comes from NC, the North Carolina State Agency, and again, send the credentials, and that would trigger another verifiable credential going directly to the mobile app. And so if I share this for the last time here on my iPhone, then screen mirroring. Right, so you received an immunity VC, and that was authorized by the North Carolina State Health Agency for Alice on today's date. And so I can accept that again. And then we can look at kind of these different credentials on the phone here as well, embedded, and from there on the workflow can be further enhanced to then start sharing it. It could be a use case of the airline industry, could be a use case where you want to take a trip and go visit one of the islands in the Caribbean, and they want to have information about the testing you took and the information that was provided you from a state agency perspective. So that's kind of the prototype. Obviously can be extended a lot further, but it uses kind of the two main technology that we're talking about here in this webinar, Daml for building all of the business logic between those different parties and allowing it to be a secure smart contract platform that can be deployed on any type of ledger, and then using Trinsic as the mechanism to issue verifiable credentials, storing them on a mobile phone, and then kind of taking it to the next stage over here where sharing it with other interested party that allowed to look at that type of information and that you as a citizen are in control of. So a very different workflow than kind of the current situation where a lot of healthcare providers have their own digital platform, their own website, their own data store, and having kind of the difficulty situation of how do I share that information outside, and obviously the whole regulatory impact is quite important here, like HIPAA. So let me take a stop here and see if there's any other questions, Manish, that you think are we can cover here over the last couple of minutes of this webinar.
Yeah, there's a question from Anchit. It says, in the demo, Alice's mobile app only connected with Rethink Ledger agent. So how does North Carolina agency and Novant were able to issue credentials to Alice?
Yeah, so in this particular use case, they're making the connection between Novant. Alice makes the connection between themselves and Novant, and at the same time the state agency. Since they've selected those two options, those connections are created, and then through the Trinsic platform, the operator that's basically sitting behind is issuing those credentials. Now, you can further enhance this to make this kind of individual connections between ALAs and lots of different healthcare systems. It could be then further enhanced to making connections between North Carolina Health Agency and other state agencies, and that will require kind of different connections that need to be established at the very beginning of this that I showcased in this workflow.
Yeah, perfect. So I think we are almost out of time. I'll just try to recap here a little bit. So one of the key things that key takeaways is that hopefully you saw that using smart contracts is a way to bridge data islands both within and outside the enterprises. So even though we are used to using smart contracts in a traditional blockchain setting, think about multiple pop-up clinics and various departments within a company that need to share information and have so many data silos. You could easily bridge them using Daml and then cross the next hurdle of how to interact on a blockchain over multiple, between multiple organizations at a later point in time. So that's one. The second is obviously this provides a great customer experience as well as privacy. Finally, I think this demo was hosted on Project Daml, which is a managed cloud provided by Digital Asset. Provides security and all of those things. You could also look at a platform called Sextant by blockchain technology partners, blockchaintp.com. That's also a very nice managed platform where you could deploy such a network on Sawtooth and AWS Aurora, AWS QLDB, and as well as Besu. So, that's another platform. I'll send some of those links over in a follow-up email when I send out the recording. And obviously you can get Daml at docs.daml.com. You can learn about Trinsic at trinsic.id. I'll send some more information, of course, after the webinar. And then, of course, you can contact Bart at rtledgers.com. There's also a wonderful video that Bart created. You can obviously look at this webinar, but there's another more detailed YouTube video, and this link is here, but I'll obviously send it out in the follow-up email. Finally, diagnostic testing is obviously a great segue into a supply chain conversation. So as you see demand, as you see where the testing rates are positive, where you need more supplies, you can make the entire supply chain more responsive. And that was the subject of a webinar we did a couple of months ago with a company called Innove. They had developed a nice PPE supply chain solution. So I'll include a link to that as well in the follow-up. So with that, I think any last thoughts, Bart, Riley, and Corey, before we, and of course, sorry, I wanted to mention there were several questions that remained unanswered live, but we are going to get back to you. Corey and I will, and Bart will get together, and we'll send out the responses to everybody on the list shortly.
Yeah, Manish, I just want to add one more plug here at the end. We talked a lot about what this can do for business processes and healthcare institutions, but I think that the impact that this will have on individual people's lives, or the potential that it will have for individual people and their ability to access services securely and easily is really, can't be overstated. And I'm really excited to see this technology both from the Daml side and the Verifiable Credentials side evolving.
Perfect. Yeah.
I want to encourage everyone. This is Corey. If you're interested in Daml applications for healthcare or other industries, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're happy to explore opportunities and ideas that you might have about building solutions in Daml.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much for spending your time today with us. And hopefully you found the webinar informative. Obviously, if you have any questions, definitely reach out. I'll include our contact details as well in the follow-up that I send out. And thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.